some varying. I don't have a complete list, but these are a lot of small little projects that are needed that add up to the total, so not significant major projects to be highlighted in each year, just a series of projects needed in the stormwater utility. Funding here, again, about 95% from revenue bonds and about 5% from cash. Again, it's about a $2.2 million capital program. Again, here the stormwater utility currently does not have any existing debt, so we have the blue chart on the bottom is the operating expenditure, no existing debt in the stormwater utility, the purple bars being the proposed new debt service. The rate-funded system reinvestment funding, again, because we're doing that net of debt, you can see that there's very little of the rate funding because the debt is the annual debt service principal payment is actually greater than the annual depreciation expense. So not a lot of additional funding set aside for depreciation expense, and then also some transfers to the capital fund in the early years and in the latter years where additional revenues were transferred over to capital to help pay for perhaps some unidentified capital project needs in the later years of the study period. So the rate adjustment strategy for the stormwater utility, and we're going to call this the baseline analysis because I do have a couple of options to show in a few slides. This is current practice again. So the major cost drivers are, there are some additional O&M costs in 2011 for the stormwater utility. These were things that were previously unfunded on the operating costs. There is the proposal for one additional full-time staff equivalent to be added for storm in 2013, and then of course the new debt service to fund the capital program gives us a need for about a 14.5% increase in each year of the study period over the 5 years. Looking at the dollars on the bottom, the stormwater rate schedule is currently $8 per month per equivalent service unit. And then so we showed that amount increasing there over time. So just between $1 and $2 increase per year for the sewer rate. Excuse me, the storm rate.
Per month.
Per month.
Yes, per month. Yes. Looking at the forecast, then the top line again just showing that rate strategy does demonstrate that over the study period the revenues are getting up to a point where they're able to fully fund those forecasted obligations. Now, a couple of questions came up on and scenarios that we've provided on storm credit policies. So just a couple of notes on credits for storm water. That's essentially for on-site mitigation type activities. Rate credits are not legally required for a stormwater utility. However, most stormwater utilities do provide some level of credit for customers who have on-site mitigation on their properties. Again, the rate credits, they vary substantially in application from city to city. They vary in complexity. Looking at kind of the industry range of things that we've seen is that they range from about 25% to about 60% of the total costs are eligible for rate credits. The key features in putting together a credit policy, sustainable credit policy, is that it should be cost-based and acknowledge that some, if not most, stormwater program costs are fixed and unaffected by those who mitigate their impacts. It should acknowledge that even those customers that do fully mitigate their own impacts are still served by the stormwater program, protected by the public system from things like runoff from other people's property, local flooding in the streets in front of your property. The city's current practice is to provide a 50% rate credit to all of their MPDS permit holders, and that's equal to about 18% of the customer base for the stormwater utility. We've put together a scenario. So the first one we're looking at is the baseline scenario of current practice, which we showed on the previous slide, where the current rate is $8, increasing to about $16 per month over the study period. The current credit of 50% then results in that bottom line showing the monthly permit holder rate would be $4, increasing to about $8. That's under the city's current practice for rate credits. we've provided an alternative of if the city implements a 75% credit to the MPDS holders, what would happen to the rate to the other customers, and what would that credited rate be? So it goes, instead of, for example, $9.16 in 2011, it would go to $9.70 for all non-permit holders and down to $2.42 for the MPDS permit holders. By the end of the study period, all customers would be paying the $17 versus $4 for the MPDS holders. So essentially about a $1 difference in impact over the study period for moving to an increased credit policy. Moving now into then looking at updating the system development charges for the utilities. Again, a system development charge is the charge that new development pays to recover a proportionate share of the facilities that will be serving them. Just kind of an overall graphic of what the approach is we look at the total cost of the existing facilities, and there are some adjustments. There are, you subtract out you subtract out contributed capital, you add in interest costs, you net out debt principal, and then you look at adding in your capital improvement program projects that are either upgrades or expansions to the system. We exclude the replacement projects from this type of a charge because those are to be recovered from rates. Then you take that total cost, you divide it by the total number of equivalent units that the systems can serve with the existing and new capital, and that derives $8 per unit of capacity of what the charge would be. Just a quick recap of the current methodology for water. So it's a fairly complex structure. It varies by residential zone, by multifamily dwelling unit, and then it has a series of customer type charges on it. The costs currently range from about $29.30, the charge from $29.30, which is what a typical single-family residential customer would pay, to as high as about $12,700 for some of the commercial type customers. The recommended methodology that we have here is a simplification of the charge, and also one that's consistent with the industry practice for water utilities, and that is to base the system development charge on meter size, which demonstrates how much capacity a given meter size would have on the system. So the revised charge over to the right is that for each different meter size on the system, there would be an increasingly larger charge imposed. So a typical residential type customer would pay $35.70. A medium-sized, commercial customer maybe around $28,000, and a very, very large, like commercial industrial type customer would pay those higher 4, 6, and 8-inch type charges. Looking at the sewer system development charge, again, the current methodology, fairly complex, varies by residential, multifamily dwellings, and commercial types, whether they're restaurants or professional offices. Again, the rates range from about $56.20 to about $133,800, with the typical single-family resident paying the $56.20. The recommended methodology is a simplification of the charge, again consistent with the industry practice, where you're looking at an equivalent residential unit based on the city's codes. And one equivalent residential unit is equal to about 300 gallons per capita per day of water usage. So the equivalent charge updated is about $41.92 per ERU. So again, a single-family residential customer would pay $41.92, and then all other types of customers would pay that for essentially every 300 gallons per day. Yes?
I have a quick question on the previous slide, number 38.
Excuse me, on the previous